At 9 in the morning on February 19, 1945, Corporal Tony Stein crouched in a shell crater on the black volcanic sand of Iwo Jima, watching Japanese machine gun fire tear apart the Marines to his left. He was 23 years old, a former toolmaker from Dayton, Ohio. He had 0 confirmed kills on this island. The Marines had been on the beach for less than an hour, and already the bodies were stacking up. The 28th Marines had landed on Green Beach at the southwestern base of Mount Suribachi. Their mission was simple: drive 750 yards across the narrow neck of the island to cut off the volcano from the main Japanese force. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi had other plans. He had built 11 miles of tunnels on this 8-square-mile island. Over 300 reinforced concrete pillboxes ringed the defenses, interconnected firing positions designed to turn every yard of advance into a killing field. For the first 30 minutes, resistance seemed light. The Japanese let the Marines accumulate on the beaches. Then the island erupted. Stein carried a weapon that was not supposed to exist: a jury-rigged machine gun built from aircraft parts that his fellow Marines had dismissed as a pile of scrap metal. The thing weighed 25 pounds, looked like something Frankenstein would build, and fired 3 times faster than any infantry weapon in the Marine Corps inventory. The standard-issue Browning automatic rifle fired 300 to 650 rounds per minute from 20-round magazines. Stein's weapon fired 1,350 rounds per minute. A 100-round belt lasted about 4 seconds of continuous fire. The Marine Corps had never issued anything like it, because the Marine Corps had never built anything like it. 2 mechanics in Hawaii had. If you want to see how a corporal with a homemade machine gun changed the outcome of the bloodiest day in Marine Corps history, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us share more forgotten stories like this one. Back to Stein. Tony Stein was born on September 30, 1921, to Jewish immigrants who had fled Austria-Hungary. His father, Steve, died when Tony was 3 years old. His mother, Rose, raised him and his 2 sisters through the Depression. He dropped out of high school during his freshman year, bounced between jobs, and eventually landed a tool and die apprenticeship at Delco Products. In February 1942, standing 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing 130 pounds, he won the Dayton Golden Gloves boxing championship. Neighbors described him as a daredevil who never showed fear. After Pearl Harbor, his tool company was classified as essential to the war economy, exempting him from the draft. He enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserve anyway, specifically choosing the Marines because, as he told his family, they were the first sent into battle. He served with the Paramarines in Bougainville, where he earned the nickname Sniper Exterminator after killing 5 enemy snipers in a single day. By the time he shipped out for Iwo Jima, the skinny boxer from Dayton had transformed into a 190-pound man built like a linebacker. But the weapon he carried was what set him apart from every other Marine in the Pacific. The weapon was called the Stinger. It was not his invention. Sergeant Mel Grevich and Private First Class John Little of the 5th Marine Division had built it in Hawaii while preparing for Iwo Jima. They had a problem that needed solving. Japanese defensive strategy had evolved. No more banzai charges, no more suicidal rushes into American machine gun fire. Instead, the Japanese built fortresses, reinforced concrete bunkers with walls 3 feet thick, interlocking fields of fire. Positions that could only be taken by getting close enough to shove grenades through the gun slits. The problem was getting close enough. Standard Marine weapons could not provide the volume of fire needed to suppress a bunker during an assault. The M1 Garand was accurate but too slow. The bar was automatic, but burned through its 20-round magazine in 2 seconds. The M1919 machine gun had the firepower, but weighed 31 pounds and needed a tripod and a crew to operate. None of them worked for a single Marine charging a concrete pillbox across open ground. Grevich and Little found their answer in crashed aircraft. The AN-M2 Browning was an aircraft machine gun designed for aerial combat. It weighed only 21 pounds because every ounce mattered for aircraft payload. It fired at 1,350 rounds per minute because air combat happened at closing speeds of hundreds of miles per hour. Pilots needed volume, not accuracy. These guns were everywhere in the Pacific. They served as rear defensive armament on dive bombers and torpedo planes. When aircraft crashed, which happened constantly, the guns could be salvaged. The two mechanics stripped M2 guns from wrecked planes and modified them for ground combat. They cut down M1 Garand rifle stocks and hollowed them out to accept the gun's buffer tube. They added bar bipods for stability. They fabricated rifle-style triggers from sheet metal. They mounted iron sights. They attached 100-round ammunition boxes. The finished weapon was ugly. It was heavy. It looked like something built in a garage. It was also the most devastating infantry weapon any Marine had ever carried into combat. Only 6 Stingers were ever made. Grevich worked day and night to finish them before the division shipped out, reportedly completing the final weapons while en route to Iwo Jima. Distribution was extremely limited. 5 went to Grevich's unit. 1 went to Corporal Tony Stein of A Company, 1st Battalion, 28th Marines. Stein received 1 because he had helped build them. His tool-making skills from Delco products made him useful when Grevich needed extra hands. The other Marines in his platoon were skeptical. Some thought the Stinger looked ridiculous. Others asked why he was carrying a homemade contraption instead of a real weapon. On the morning of February 19th, the Stinger answered for itself. When Stein's platoon hit the beach at Green Beach, they immediately came under fire from multiple Japanese positions. Machine guns raked the volcanic sand. Mortars exploded among the advancing Marines. The platoon was pinned down within 200 yards of the waterline. Stein's Medal of Honor citation describes what happened next. He was the first man of his unit to be on station after hitting the beach. Armed with his personally improvised aircraft-type weapon, he provided rapid covering fire as the remainder of his platoon attempted to move into position. The Stinger's rate of fire was overwhelming. Japanese gunners who had been pouring fire into the Marine lines suddenly found themselves ducking as 1,350 rounds per minute tore into their positions. The volume of fire was unlike anything they had encountered from a single infantryman. When his platoon was pinned by a particularly stubborn pillbox, Stein did something that should have been suicide. He stood up in full view of the Japanese gunners to draw their fire and locate their position. Then he charged. The citation states that he boldly charged the enemy pillboxes one by one and succeeded in killing 20 of the enemy during the furious single-handed assault. 20 confirmed kills. Multiple pillboxes destroyed. But the Stinger's 100-round belts meant Stein was burning through ammunition at an impossible rate. He needed more. So he ran back to the beach. The citation continues. He made a total of 8 trips under intense fire to replenish his ammunition, each time collecting or assisting a wounded man back to the beach. 8 trips. 8 wounded Marines carried to safety. Each trip covered several hundred yards across volcanic ash that Marines described as too soft and yielding for convenient human and vehicular traffic. The sand was so loose that men sank up to their ankles with every step. Stein removed his helmet and his shoes to run faster. He stripped off his protective gear and ran barefoot through a combat zone being raked by Japanese fire, carrying wounded men while hauling ammunition for a weapon that did not officially exist. During the assault, his Stinger was shot from his hands twice. Both times he recovered the weapon and kept fighting. When machine gun fire could not neutralize one particularly stubborn pillbox, he directed a half-track's 75mm gun until the fortification was destroyed. Later, he personally covered his platoon's withdrawal to the company position. By the end of D-Day, the 28th Marines had achieved something no other regiment accomplished. They were the only unit to reach their objectives, cutting Mount Suribachi off from the rest of the island by 10:30 in the morning. But Stein's war was far from over. He continued fighting through the capture of Suribachi. The famous flag-raising photograph was taken 4 days later, on February 23rd. Stein was wounded during the assault and evacuated to a hospital ship. He could have stayed there. The wound was serious enough to justify it. Instead, when he learned his regiment was taking heavy casualties fighting for Hill 362A on the island's western side, Stein left the hospital ship without authorization and returned to his unit. He had survived the worst day in Marine Corps history. He wouldn't survive the 10th. On March 1, 1945, Stein volunteered to lead a 19-man patrol to locate machine gun positions that had Company A pinned down. While firing his Stinger at one pillbox, fire from another cut him down. Tony Stein was 23 years old. His body was recovered approximately a week later and initially buried in the 5th Marine Division Cemetery on Iwo Jima, the same cemetery where Rabbi Roland Gittleson delivered his famous eulogy calling the burial ground the purest democracy. The Medal of Honor nomination was originally submitted for the Navy Cross. When Major General James Underhill reviewed the case, he requested more details, believing a fuller account might justify the Medal of Honor. The resulting documentation received 15 endorsements, the most of any soldier documented by military historian Brian Mark Rigg. Endorsements came from Lieutenant General Holland Smith, Admiral Chester Nimitz, General Alexander Vandegrift, and Fleet Admiral Ernest King. On February 19, 1946, exactly 1 year after his heroic actions, Rear Admiral F.W. Pennoyer presented the Medal of Honor to Stein's 24-year-old widow Joan at the Ohio State House in Columbus. His mother, Rose, watched through tears. Stein was one of 27 Medal of Honor recipients from Iwo Jima, more than any other single battle in American history. He was the first Marine to receive the Medal of Honor for actions in that battle. His citation remains the only one that specifically mentions a personally improvised aircraft-type weapon. The 6 original Stinger machine guns no longer exist. After the war, the military had no interest in preserving non-standard field modifications. The guns were likely destroyed or discarded with other surplus equipment. The only operational Stinger in the world today is a replica at the Canadian Historical Arms Museum, built decades later to demonstrate what the weapon could do. The Navy named a Knox-class frigate USS Stein after him. The ship was commissioned in 1972 and served until 1992 before being transferred to the Mexican Navy. Dayton honors its only World War II Medal of Honor recipient with the Tony Stein Memorial Bridge over the Miami River. The Marines who had doubted his homemade weapon on the transport ships never doubted it again. The ones who survived Iwo Jima told their children and grandchildren about the corporal with the aircraft gun who charged Japanese pillboxes while everyone else was pinned down, and they passed that story on for generations. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We are rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about Marines who carried weapons that should not exist into battles that should have killed them. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. You are not just a viewer. You are part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you are here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Tony Stein does not disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you are helping make that happen.